Welcome to the Be Wealthy podcast, where we bring entrepreneurs the strategies and tactics to grow your business and unlock new opportunities. Once you've achieved success, we'll teach you how to think about your money. Because wealth is about more than just cash flow. It's about freedom. Now our host, Brett Tanner.
Welcome back to the Be Wealthy podcast, where we really focus on two things: how to scale your business and make more money, and then how to take that money and do meaningful things with it. We'll give tactics and strategies. We'll also give the mindset and the beliefs of the truly, truly successful. Today's episode is no different. My good friend Dan Beer is joining us. Dan runs an organization. He just had a merger. They'll do over $900 million in sales on his real estate team, over 150 agents, 30 stateside employees. And what I love about Dan, beyond his massive business success, he is an incredible human. In this episode, we're going to dig deep into the psychology, the deep work, and actually how much he's still investing in himself to unlock more and more levels of success. I'm so excited about this episode. Let's jump in to my conversation with Dan Beer. Welcome, Dan Beer. I'm excited to have you here, man.
No, couldn't be happier to be here, dude. This is great.
So Dan, aside from being a cool dude, which I think is the highest compliment someone could get, one of the top agents in the entire country, been the top agent with your firm, leads a massive organization, entrepreneur in a variety of areas. And I'm excited to dig in, but I want to go to where we met, because I was talking to Thomas Elrod at our event last week. And I said, do you remember that like lunch, or it was like the happy hour, like afterwards? And it was you, me, Chris Lindahl was there, Thomas Elrod was there. We're all sitting around in San Diego. It was at the High Performance Academy for Brendan Burchard. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Like that was a wild. Yeah, but like we're all sitting there, and if you were to go to that moment and you were to go look at everyone's lives today, I think we would all go, I mean, we all assumed we were going to live really big lives, and we all did the things to do that. But I don't know that we'd all thought it would have been as great as it's been. And the four of us at that table, it'd be fun to go back to that table. What do you think year that was? I think that was 2009, 10-ish.
It's been a good while. And I have to say, like, the reason you welcomed me to the podcast, the reason I am so happy to be here is what you do for the audience is just awesome. Like, I hope they realize the thousands of dollars of free coaching they get from you on every episode, and pretty much every time you open your mouth, dude. So to be here is an honor, and I look to do my part.
I love it. Actually, that wasn't the first time we met. That was the moment there. We actually met at that Scottish Rite Center when I was giving a presentation with Fidelity before that, right? Like, I think that's where you and I first met, and then you came out and we spent a day at my office and hung out. That would have been before that.
Your office I think that was before that. Even though I don't remember the Scottish Rite Center, but I do remember you guys coming in and just being like, I literally bought a ticket and drove down there and was like, oh my God, I'm going to get to see, I think you were there and some of your friends were there presenting. And I was lucky enough to get our friend, who's now a mutual friend, Steve, ended up inviting me to come out to your office, and you're gracious enough to give what was that? I don't remember if it was a full day or a full 2 days of just opening up literally everything in your world to us, which was a cool thing. I was a very small fish in what seemed like an ocean that I was like, what is this thing, man? So that stuck with me. That visit stuck with me forever, straight up.
Oh, thanks, man. That's cool. So, Dan, I'd like to start, like, this podcast is all about people, about wealth, how people think about. We do two things, right? We try to provide some ideas that help entrepreneurs scale their business, and then we try to help them think differently with strategies around their money. And wealth is so much more than money, and no one gets that more than you. My idea is that our views of money are shaped by an experience we had as a kid, right? I always go to, like, we're 10 years old, we're sitting around the family dinner table, money's talked about. Mm-hmm. Tell me some early stories, right? Were the beers, gosh, we had all the money in the world and we're just rolling around in it and driving to, and it doesn't mean that you had an abundance mindset, that you had a lot of money, but just what was it like? Was it scarce? Was it feared? What were those early origins of money in your world?
Well, it's an interesting journey, and I've actually been making a lot of effort to see it kind of from a third party perspective now, as if it were a movie that I could observe, because it had, okay, on the surface, I was born in Mexico City. Okay. And
I never do that.
so were my parents, so were all my grandparents. And my great grandparents all came with nothing kind of story from, avoiding different wars and all the things that would happen in Europe. And so they were all mostly Eastern European who left between World War I, World War II to Mexico City. And our family sort of started all over again from there. But when I came to San Diego, I was only 3 years old. My brothers were born here. I was born there. We lived in low income housing and that sort of thing. And like the short of it is I watched us move from low income housing to a really big house, which now I look back and I think I looked it up several years ago. I looked it up. It was like 1,400-foot house that I was like we moved to a big house in my view. And then certainly we moved to a bigger home. And, I watched my I watched them rise. I watched my dad's work. Look, going back to low income housing, I thought my dad had the coolest vehicle on the planet because it was this big van with nothing in the back, just this big empty space and some cool writing on the outside. Now I understand that he drove the company cargo van, right? Like,
Yeah.
now I see that. But in any case, on the one hand, to answer your question, I watched my dad work his way as a salesperson from there through paying for my private university in cash. At the same time, I saw him lose his business, start over. We're almost going to move to Mexico City again because, he doesn't have anything and it's all crashed and gone to hell, and he builds it back up and, et cetera. So I watched that, and that was the very positive side of what I experienced. That's the side that I fear my kids are not experiencing. That's the side that I really, frankly, need to find a circle of people around me that are wanting to have this conversation about our children and how that are not going to experience that, hopefully. And, how do we replace those experiences through wisdom? So those were the positive things of how I got to see him fight and work, etc. But the thing that most comes to mind, something that's just been surface, Brett, as I've done a lot of personal work, especially in this last year, just a lot. And this memory flashed back to me. And it was a memory of my mom specifically saying to me, like we'd see nice things, we'd see people with certain cars, with certain things, with certain vacation homes, or they'd have whatever. The people had some things, and the comment that I remember very vividly in my mind was, "That's not for us. That's not for us. That's for them. That's not for us. That's for the rich. That's not for us. That's for them. That's not us." Constant. And so in many senses, I didn't realize until very recently what a lifelong journey it's been, not to self-sabotage when I get to certain places in, my financial growth, because, hey, that's not for us.
Why do you think it wasn't for us? Like, what did that mean? Like, how did that show up when you go? Was it something you talked about? Or is it just you're looking around going, man, we got this stress. We're going up, down, bigger house, pain. And you're like, well, that's just not our journey kind of feels like this and theirs feels like that. Is it?
No, even though it's not, that's the strange thing, is they're not really correlated. Like while my dad, and he had his ups and downs, but overall you'd paint more an upward curve for that journey. It's kind of like how your mind can get stuck in that world you used to be in. And a great example of this would be, I invest with somebody very routinely who syndicates apartment buildings. I think he's a great operator. He does value add buildings, and I prefer to own my own. I always prefer to own my own real estate, but if I haven't purchased enough in that particular year and I need to allocate money and get the depreciation, etc., he's where I'm going to go a lot of the time. So anyway, he calls me. I've been investing with him for over 10 years. He calls me not long ago, and he describes the opportunity. And I can tell, and I trust him completely and implicitly. And I can tell, he's really excited about this. This is a good one. He's like, "So how much you in for?" And I go, "All right, I'm in. I'm in for $100,000. And I'm thinking dude, that's a lot of money. He's older. He's white. He's very direct. I don't know what kind of, can we use a little language on your podcast, bro?
Well, you can use, yeah. Oh yeah.
He's on the phone and he goes, "Dan, why are you such a pussy?" And I'm like, "Dude, what are you talking about?" He's like, and I just, I'm thinking, I just told you I'm going to give you 100,000. What do you mean? He says, Dan, had I called you 8 years ago and how much would you have invested with me? How much did you invest with me back then? I was like, well, about 100 grand. He's like, are you the same person? Are you worth the same? Is your balance sheet the same? Are your earnings the same? Is your income? You're not the same. And so you're stuck in this smaller former self of yours, like version of yourself. You're investing like a puss. I mean, this is his language, right? And he's just trying to shake me. And I go, shit, you're right. You're right. I am not investing as who I am today. I'm investing as who I am then. So when it comes back to that conversation with, about my mom and my dad, and like, it didn't really matter what was going on with us actually. She was stuck in a scarcer time and transmitting that into us. By the way, my mom and dad, like anybody would sign up to have them. They are world-class parents. They're beautiful. I was with them last night at the beach having dinner. They're amazing, most loving people. But everyone's got their stuff. Look, I'm doing something to my kids right now that I'm not aware of, for sure. Okay? And this was just that. That's all it is. It doesn't make them anything but people trying to do their absolute best. But that created some of that smallness that's been a battle for me.
And I love you. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, and that's my point when I ask that question is we've all got to go back and work through those things, right? My view was seeing, my dad he invested in this business and had his brother run it. And instantly my dad started having these like sores on his back. They're like psoriasis. They're from stress. So I remember as a little kid rubbing this cream on his back and his brother's running at the ground. The business burns to the ground, literally. Uncle takes the money, right? And doesn't, give it to my dad. The sores a month later are gone. So me growing up working through it, I saw, man, sometimes success is pain, like physical. Actually, so I had to do the deep work, which you talked about, to work through. Okay, that's his story, that's his journey, but that's not my journey. Just because you had that experience growing up a certain way, or your parents had an experience, we can love and honor that experience. But if we're not careful, it becomes a part of your and my identity. Fast forward, you and I become very successful entrepreneurs, but we're still making decisions based on being 10-year-old watching our parents have a hard situation. And the people today are living that. Like, that's what this is about, is I go back to that story and do the work to process that. And so you said something that I want to go to, which was, I've done a lot of work in the last year. So here you are, Dan, the industry, the world looks at you. I mean, you're at the peak of the mountain. Why, literally, and you climb mountains, which is an ironic analogy. Why are you doing so much work right now? Like, why aren't you just kicking back in your office, watching the organization run itself and then thinking about the next mountain you're going to climb? Why are you going and doing the deep work?
Man, it's just so, like, this whole conversation, and you touched it, like, about your 10-year-old self driving decisions for your 40-something-year-old self today. What's beautiful about, in my mind, the arena of business, money, finance, investment, all the things you're so great at, is the reality is none of it actually really matters. But it matters so much in that it's just another space in which that in which things arise, including the opportunity to work with that 10-year-old self. So we're getting into kind of a little bit of a mystical space with this question, but it's the true answer is that it's just a space in which things arise, in which you get to learn about yourself, in which the deal went through, in which it didn't go through, in which the client said yes, said no, not disappointed you or didn't, the employee didn't perform, they failed, etc. How are you reacting? How are you showing up? What part of that was created by you, and what part of yourself that from a former, from your past. We create things in our past when you're that 10-year-old person. Things are happening and you have very little sense of control about what's going on around you. So there's certain things about yourself that you build to cope with those things. And they actually serve you. They serve you. They help you survive those years. They help you understand those years, interpret those years. But what happens is you don't let go of those things. So they used to serve you. They no longer do. And the point of business as these things show up is, hold on a moment. I'm reacting like I used to, or I'm feeling like I used to. That was good then, but it's not good now. So it's really just a space to develop as a human being. That's all business really is. And that's why there's, you've heard the phrase, business is a spiritual journey. I always was captured by that phrase, but I never really understood it, dug into it. I knew intuitively that it was true. That's all I knew. But I didn't know more than that. But that is, but this conversation is what, how that all connects, what makes that true. And so it's a space in which you get to grow. You get to grow. You get to do the inner work, the personal work, which ultimately, I mean, as long as you've got food, shelter, and like all those sorts of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all the red is, as long as the basics are all there, that's what it's about. But what happens ironically is it unlocks, what does it tend to do? It tends to unlock wealth. It tends to unlock opportunities. It tends to unlock businesses. It tends to unlock relationships you never thought you would have. So it works really beautifully. There's nothing more important you could do than work on self, even if you're financially driven, as I am.
If we were to go back, Dan, and look at the amount of time you were spending working on yourself, say you started your career 15 years ago, whatever, like, let's go back. We'll use 2010 as a year as an example. And then we look at the amount, same year, last 12 months. Talk to us about the time, effort, energy, money you're spending, investing into Dan. All things coaching and training. It's the deep work, the mindfulness, the spiritual, the climbing the mountain, the business masterminds, all those rooms that you and I are in. How does it compare from both time and cost then to now? And, kind of walk people through the why. Why would you continue to do that now?
Well, I mean, to give a cliche but accurate enough answer, there's a 10x difference, so to speak, in what I did then and now. Now, I've been putting myself, I would say since I've spent a solid 10 years, maybe 12 years, very purposefully injecting myself into business environments, but where the entire conversation was business, period, and only. And it's amazing, man. It's like, it's so easy now to look back on where I hit ceilings and on where, like, those business conversations, don't get me wrong, they moved me 100%. Like, they definitely impacted with tangible results. But I also see where I got stuck, where I made mistakes, where I didn't know what I didn't know. And it wasn't because I didn't know something business related. It's actually because I didn't understand that it's really about, what's going on the inside is going to show up on the outside. That, like, those sorts of, I didn't understand this second piece to it. I hope I'm being articulate enough to be.
It's so clear. Yes.
So, I've probably spent 12 years pretty deeply on the business side. When it comes to the personal side, then it's just an exponential difference completely. And yes, from a cost standpoint, though, I wouldn't actually put a dramatic difference on that, because in many respects, I've borrowed from the costs I used to spend on the business side, just simply moved them to personal. But on the time perspective side, I mean, I spend an hour every morning in silence, just with myself, just me, no guide, no music, no nothing, just me and my and so there's definitely a different amount of time. That's where the biggest difference is, for sure.
I just want to say back what you said, because I think it was so powerful. And I'm going to say, and you tell me if I've nailed it. Like, no, it makes total sense. I think you and I went on the exact same journey. If you and I were having this conversation 15 years ago, I could tell you I wasn't capable of having this conversation. My answer was winners win. You get in the room, you learn the skills, you hammer the work, you drive, right? Run hard. And when you're tired of running, run harder, right? That would have been Brett's, 29-year-old brain. That's how it worked. I ran hard. And today I realize, as I go forward, I realize, man, there's so much more to it than just running hard and crushing in business that makes life so much more rich. Rich in all ways, right? Relationships, experiences with people you love. And so what I'm hearing you say is, the rooms I was in was all about business and they created results. Today, I'm still interested in that, but I'm interested in, like, a more well-rounded experience that hits all the areas of my life that I care about and speak to me differently today than they did, right? I mean, it's funny, I'm spending more time, effort, energy, and money today on myself than I ever have. My reasoning be because everything I know, everything I believe is getting me the results I'm getting in this exact moment, right? Like, Like if I knew how to make more money or I knew how to have a better relationship, I'd already be doing it. And so the next unlock for me and getting better and having even like my marriage is bliss, but I want to take it to the next level. Well, I've got to do something different to do that, right? And that might be unlocked through sitting by yourself in your backyard for an hour and just being, right? That's so in today's world, that is so far off book, right? To take an hour for yourself without a phone, without a guide, without a thing, and just gonna be. So, would you agree with that? You went from hard charging to I'm still the same hard charging guy. I just softened the edges a little, and I'm looking for a more well-rounded world than just one thing.
There's no doubt about it. And it's actually not that you want to do it for this purpose, but there's good things breed good things. Like it's actually more magnetic. It's more, I remember being in the presence of somebody not long ago, and this person was just he was so masculine, all man, no doubt about it, like strong, and at the same time, what so unbelievably gentle, and so caring, so insightful, and so the combination of that was magnetic. It was like, whoa, like there's no doubting this is a man, but he's on a different level. Like he has nothing to prove, nothing to da 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 da, and at the same time he's proving everything. And so yeah, I would say that speaks 100% to me the way you described that. It's go ahead.
No, go there. I want you to finish that thought.
Well, I was thinking about how you were talking about your 29-year-old self and would they have and could they. See, here's the thing is nothing in our past could have been any different. And not because there's not free will. There's absolutely free will. But the biggest place in which free will is exercised is in your development of your level of awareness, your level of consciousness. So you're only ever operating to the best, highest level that you possibly can, know how, and are even aware of. And so that's why nothing could have been different about 29-year-old Brett. He did his absolute, nothing could have been different about what my mom shared. She did her best based on where she had developed her awareness. Had she become aware of her speech toward us, etc., from doing her own work, then she wouldn't have said those things, which would have then had this, effect down the road, generations. But you are only ever operating to, first of all, you're always doing your best. I believe that about everybody. Name the worst person ever. They were doing their best. They just have such a high level of ignorance and such a low consciousness that like whatever atrocities they're doing, like they somehow think will bring them peace, even though they won't, even though it will make them miserable. But anyway, we're on to this crazy conversation, but it's related to money. How are you supposed to, like, Brett, I had years where I wrote 7 figures to the IRS, 7 figures to the IRS. If you want to ground this conversation, bring it back to money, let's do it. But why did I do that? I didn't have the awareness. I did the best I could.
I was running hard. I'm just running. I'm doing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes right now is all behavior makes sense with enough information. And I read that in a book just recently. And I think about your words were everyone's doing their best, right? Even the person who's doing terrible things. But like that quote, right? All behavior makes sense. If we knew everything about that person's life, maybe they were beaten or, they had to live on the street. I mean, we don't know their journey, right? But if you knew all of that and then you saw them do that thing, you're like, well, that makes total sense, right? All behavior makes sense with enough information. Everyone's trying to do their best. But there's levels, right? And you can constantly go to work on yourself. We only have one vehicle ourselves to work on. And we all should be doing the work that you're still doing right now, that I'm doing right now, and to figure out what's going to make you enjoy. Naval Ravikant's got that quote, the intelligence is just getting what you want out of life, whatever that is, right? And your goals are different than mine, and my goals are different than yours. And it doesn't mean you're right and I'm wrong, but intelligence is actually just getting what you want at the end of the journey. And I just love the way you shared that. It's so cool to see someone at your level still being going, hey, there's more here. I still have things to work on. I still have mountains to climb, figuratively, literally. So when all of that today, don't go, you and I would have came from, if you'd asked me what wealth meant in Brett's 20-year-old brain, I'm going to tell you, it would have been just all the things you think it'd be, right? It would be a materialistic vision board of crap. What does wealth mean to Dan right now? What does wealth mean to you?
It's tied to and related to anxiety and lack thereof, right? Of course. So it's about peace, it's about calm. So we could define it with, does your passive income does it cover your expenses and this and that? Yeah. There's definitions that I'm not downplaying. They're super legit. And in fact, they give a good guide as to how to reduce that anxiety and how to bring peace. But ultimately, whether my passive income is going to cover my expenses or not cover my expenses, etc., if I am peaceful, if I have a low level of anxiety, if I have a high level of joy, that is wealth. That's wealth.
I love that. I think that's a great, by the way, I ask this question every podcast, and I've yet to get the answer that had anything to do with money. Like you said, it's a scorecard. We measure it, we track it, we're going to have investments, and we hope our passive income is massive. But yet the thing it provides, I couldn't agree more. It's peace. If your head hits the pillow at the end of the day and you can sleep great and you wake up happy and you're not in a state of fight or flight and anxiety, that's a beautiful definition of wealth.
I think the reason that people get really caught up in like wealth is just being able to do whatever the heck you want, period, no matter what. Like that is awesome. Like that is very awesome. But the reason I would define it a little differently, like the way I did, is to me that it has to do with how people view goals. It's like, I think goals are wildly misunderstood and not appropriately set. And well, they might be appropriately set, but they're not appropriately treated once set. And so what I mean is, let me make this tangible, is that someone will say, in this case, okay, the goal is my passive income must exceed my expenses. And until that day, I haven't hit my goal. And so they wake up every day. Are we there? No. Okay. Well, we're not there. We're not happy yet. We're not joyful yet. Okay. Are we there? No. Okay. A year later, are we there? Almost. Okay. Let's just keep grinding. And the reality is you could get to the same place you were going to get to anyway, but it can be an entirely different approach. I think goals should just simply be an orientation. So for example, if we want to climb Mount Everest, and Mount Everest is in this direction over here, and we're facing the opposite direction, we're never going to do it. We're not going to get there, ever, no matter how hard we try. So if we face the right direction, we get en route, and we are now genuinely climbing Mount Everest, right? We're en route. What the way I believe goals should be treated is, okay, I'm now oriented correctly. Now just release it. Just release it. And go have an adventure every day. Go have a daily adventure on that route every single day. That's just great for the sake of itself. And the reality is you're going to end up at the summit either way. You're going to end up halfway up and get blown out in a storm either way. You're probably not going to end up in a different place. You're just going to have enjoyed it all very differently. You could have been wealthy the whole way through. The whole way through, you could have been wealthy. Versus, there's a great book that I've never read, but when I've described this to people, I've had a couple people say, "Oh, that's like this book. I think it's called Gap in the Gain." I've never read it, but
It's a great book. Yeah.
Essentially, it's like, okay, so if I get to 100 feet off the summit and decide to save my life because some storm's happening, like, I'm a loser. If I get there, I win. So yeah, I just climbed 99% of this deadly mountain. I suck because of the last tiny 1%. The last tiny 1% is going to dictate my entire self-value. No.
Yeah, his whole idea is there's a gap. You're 90% up, and instead of rewarding yourself for the 90%, there's the gap between where you are and the top of the mountain. Then you get a little further and you're still like, but there's still a gap. And then if you then got to the top of the mountain, you and I would create a new mountain. And his whole point in the book is, you know what you do on this mountain analogy? Turn around. Just look where you started and focus on how far you've come instead of what's left to do. And your passive income example, instead of going, gosh, I'm at 1,000 a month, I need to get to 10,000. Man, there's a $9,000 gap. Instead, look back when you had zero. man, I went from a 0 to 1,000 in this period of time. That's cool. Right. And so instead of measuring progress against some new goal that's bigger and larger, because that's all they'll be, that's good. Set the orientation, right? I love that word you use. Just set the orientation and then measure it by looking back on how far you progressed. And the feeling is gratitude, appreciation. You're like, yeah, I'm doing it. As opposed to, man, there's so much more that I don't have.
Which
That's the whole premise of that book. And that's
which I said you would probably end up getting to the same place anyway.
with their exponentially more joy.
Probability you're probably going to go further. There's a very large probability you're going to go further because you're actually feeling good about yourself on the way there.
Not questioning it every day like, this is hard, this sucks. It's storm, right? And you're like, you're getting down, right? It's a negative feeling. I'm not where I want to be, as opposed to positive, like, dude, we've come a long way, man. We got it.
Yeah.
To your point, I think you get there way from. I love that. So you had this moment, by the way. You mentioned The Richest Man in Babylon. I had my kids read that book, by the way. So much can be learned in that book, right? Easy to read. Anyone with kids, I would encourage them to have them read that book. It's just a great, and you need to read it and talk about it. So you had this moment as you read Richest Man in Babylon. Talk a little bit about that.
So first of all, I need to reread it because I read it as a former version of myself. And so I absolutely need to reread it. But what stands out is probably one of the most simple concepts in the whole book, worth the price of entry entirely, which is there's this poor, I think he's a peasant in this ancient setting, and he can barely get through the day. He could barely get through the week. He's just surviving financially. And he meets this sage or this wise person. I forget exactly who it is. And he's wealthy, and he asks him to please mentor him. What should I do? And so what I took from it this is an old memory. I definitely need to reread it as I need to reread it. But what I remember is that the advice he gets from this person is, well, no matter what, period, no arguments, point blank, you're going to save a minimum. Please, guys, listening to this, minimum is the key word, of 10% of your income will be saved, and it will be turned into employees like that right? Those pennies for this guy will be turned into employees. He might have used the word slaves. I'm not sure because it's an older book, but basically whose job it will be only to ever produce more of, to duplicate themselves, to produce more of themselves. In other words, to create interest, to create more money. And of course he argues, but dude, I'm barely getting through the day. I can hardly survive. Like there's days where I think I don't even have enough for food. And somehow this wise person convinces him that, no, you're going to do it. You're going to be fine. And it goes to this law that we all know to be true, which is that things just tend to expand into the space that's provided to them, right? If you're back at school, if your professor gave you a month to write the paper, it took a month. If they gave you a week to write the same paper, it took a week. And so this person takes the advice, takes the chance at the risk of his own demise, because he feels like he would basically die if he gives up a single dime. And sure enough, he learns that, you know what? I'm making it through. I'm actually starting to build this little tiny war chest. I actually am starting to see a little bit of a result over here, etc. And so it goes, and he obviously goes through more lessons and so on. But Brett, the one that stood out to me, which is why I really need to reread it, is simply that. But from that, I did something I'd never done. See, I was basically worth 0, or I was worth like what I'd made in the last few months. And I was worth what I had made in the last few months for years, and years of making six figures, multi six figures. I was worth what I'd made in the last few months. And I'm talking about a former version of myself with less expenses, with less kids, with less responsibilities, and I still couldn't stack anything. Nothing. It would go to the government. It would go to who knows what, to the restaurant.
The universe.
The universe. So from that, I decided, I just pulled out of my rear end. I just said, I'm going to save $1 million in 3 years. Granted, my
savings. Nothing. Now, by the you're like, prior to this, you just set the, but you're like, hey, I'm a high earner. I just have high expenses. So I'm earning, I'm spending all of it, saving a little. Like you said, I'm 2 to 3 months ahead. And then you go from there, right? You said, I'm not worth a lot, and I'm going to save $1 million in 3 years, which seems like a Herculean goal, right? At that moment.
I must have been making maybe 400 or 500,000 a year. And so there's people listening, rolling their eyes. Oh, that's a lot of money. Well, it's not a lot of money if you're spending 450,000 of it. Okay. So, so that one decision led to me saying, okay, well, then how much is that? And if I'm not mistaken, I think I still remember the number. It's like $27,777 if you take a million divided by 36. And so I just created this automated deposit from my business account where my income would come into, and this deposit that would just shoot that money off every month, period. Every single month. And my plan was that a year later I would have that $1,000,000. And how would I survive that? Because I was spending way more than that. How would I adjust? Would I have to sacrifice? What would I have to it was scary to do. But long point is, I had that $1,000,000 3 years later and then some. Because first of all, in watching that stack and watching that grow and watching that money actually produce money, it got so exciting that some months I sent more. Right. It was a fun thing to do. And I realized my life's not actually changing so much. I just happen to have been spending money on the dumbest of things that brought me no joy, no peace, no reduction in anxiety. And so there really wasn't a sacrifice in it at all. But that book initiated that process. The other thing that was really key is that for the first time, and it's so important if you're in business and you're just making money and it seems like it's all good and well. Like, the other thing I did simultaneously that was just as important is that I opened an account where taxes would go to every month. And I opened another account where my household spending would go. So my wife and I used to argue a lot about, like, it was me. I'd say, why are you spending on this? Why are you spending on that? I'd get anxious about the things she was spending on. And so the way that I reduced that is we said, okay, well, how much are we willing to spend on our personal life? X amount. Great. Well, that X amount went to this personal spending account. And now my mindset really changed. Like, in theory, it doesn't work this way exactly, but in theory, she could go buy 10 Gucci bags if she wants to, as long as she's not asking for more at the end because we ran out of money. Right. Like, and so I no longer had to micromanage the household. It's just, all right, here's that money we agreed to. Please make sure we have groceries. Please make sure we have dinner to go out and have dinner. Please make sure that we have enough for our, the kids and for their school and et cetera, and whatever else. Like, I don't have to be upset about any other expense because we're within that. So creating that household spending account, the tax account, and the wealth account, was a huge outcome of that book.
Kind of always no. Well, it's so good. First of all, I've read the book relatively recently. I think the quote in there, he says like 10% of what you earn is yours to keep. I think that's the first principle, right? 10% is yours to keep, and then the idea, he goes through it. I read it recently with my kids, and it was one of the crazy ones in that story is, so he gets successful, and he's like, I'll just say he's a blacksmith by trade as an example, and like the guy that's making the saddles wants him to invest money. And he's like, and it's not saddles, but it's the same idea. So he gives him the money and he loses it all. And he goes back to the mentor. He's like, well, wait, I saved the money. I did what you said. I made a great investment. I was trying to make more money. He's like, yeah, well, what do you know about saddles? You should have invested in another blacksmith that needed the tools or what, like, so in other words, investor money. But that book contains like a manual for people to think about. But to go back to your story, I think what you just said with establishing a structure at home, I think is absolutely brilliant, right? Rather than feeling like, gosh, I'm working and is the money being spent right at home? I think every guy's had that question, right? And there's on a man watch that's like, man, is it? And it could be woman, that's watching her man do it either way, right? Either side of that coin. But I love that. Hey, let's mutually agree on the number. Spend it how you want, but we got to have the same thing. We got to have food. We got to have stuff for the kids. And at the end of the month, if we're a little lean, we're gonna hang out for a bit. We did something very similar in our world with Tara. I was like, hey, we're got X dollars. And of course, one month we were a little short. And it's like, what are you gonna do at the end of the month? I was like, nothing. We're just gonna live. We're gonna figure it out. So, we're gonna go to the pantry and we had the money. We could have tapped into it. But the pain, Dan, of having the money and just going, no, we're not going out because we don't have the money. So we're going to get like this can here of beans or whatever, it was at the time. We're going to eat in and play a board game or whatever we're doing. And next month, I think we're going to be a little more purposeful with making sure that we don't have to do this those last 5 days. But like my wife would tell you all those experiences, right? We've had, but getting that alignment. What I heard you say is you and your wife have total alignment on that. Hey, we've agreed on the number. The number's probably grown maybe on an annual basis or whatever you guys discussed from 10 years ago to now. But I love you sharing it like that. I love that these accounts, taxes are, I think, what hammer people, especially in real estate, but all business owners. Where taxes come out, right? They all of a sudden have a record year. They've been making, in your example, $400,000 or $500,000 a year. And then one year something clicks, they hit $1 million. And everyone watching this is like, oh my gosh, I would love to have that happen. And actually unprepared, that person, it's a nightmare. Because what's going to happen? They don't have the taxes set aside for that. They don't realize that extra 500,000, if they don't do anything, more than 150,000 of it's not theirs. It's the government, and they likely spend it on their lifestyle. And now that additional income could actually leave you in a worse position by not being prepared. And people don't think about like, oh, if I just had more money, it'd solve my problems. No, actually, money's a weapon, and used incorrectly, you could shoot yourself with it. It could hurt you. Like,
It that lifestyle creep also that you get in that year, and then just the pain that most people won't go through of then undoing that lifestyle. And so yeah, it can create all kinds of problems for sure.
So if you were to share maybe a handful of lessons here on money, you shared the tax thing. Is there anything else? I mean, because it was so good, and I don't want you to invent something, but I just feel like the bad CPA. I know you had a bad CPA that cost you a bunch of money. You talked about the tax account. Talk about alignment at home. Are there any other principles that you go by today, or that you teach your team or your audience when you're saying, "Hey, this is a different way to think about your money and your wealth"?
Well, I think that, you touch on the CPA, which we talked about offline. And so it's really worth sharing here. It's not that he was a bad CPA. He was a good CPA for a former version of myself with different earnings. And so the lesson really that you can just simply avoid the problem is, as you're watching your active income grow, make sure that you're also watching who's the team around you. Like your team around you, be it your CPA, your attorney, that sort of thing. It has to grow with you. Otherwise, you're going to get when that is a mismatch. I'll just, tell you straight up. There was a year in which my CPA's suggestion was, hey, to solve your income issue, or no, excuse me, that my big tax idea for the year is, let's just write a $1.4 million check to the state of California. And that way we can write it off against federal. That was the brilliant idea. And that was before the SALT tax changes and so on. That was before. Well, now I know, wait a second, I'm not a CPA and I'm not a tax strategist, but I know very well that there are simple strategies where instead of that costing me 1.4, it could have cost me 400,000, 500,000, maybe at worst. So in other words, it cost me $1 million, 800,000 minimum, just to have the wrong team. And so like the lesson is, make sure that you're being mindful of that. If your income is 2, 3, 4, 5x, whatever it was in the past, and you're working with that former CPA, maybe you hired the boss back then. It's possible. It's more likely that you didn't.
Yeah, I think that's so good that some of our team, like I love this former self analogy, right? They were great. Like my initial CPA was awesome. But as my world grew and my resources and the complexity of the tax return, that person may not be the same. And your CPA may not be your tax strategist. Those may be two different folks.
100%, which I then learned later. I then learned later. They're two different people. Absolutely. It was cool hearing you talk about your recent read of Richest Man in Babylon, because you jogged my memory, which was that on the one hand, it was a painful read. By the way, guys, read it. It's small, it's enjoyable, it's beautiful, and it's easy. But it was a painful read because I was like, oh, that's why I lost that money. Oh, that's why I lost that money. Oh, that's why that didn't work out. It It literally was a blueprint for every single reason why anything that's ever gone wrong in my world financially, anywhere I've ever invested where I lost the entire investment, which has happened multiple times. It was like this thing hitting me like, yeah, dummy, like that's why. Like it's like, really? I just had to read this like 90-page book some years ago and I would have not lost all that money. Really?
A 90-page book that's a fable written about like, and the stories like about nothing we're even talking about, right? It's the blacksmith and but to your point, I look at it too. The things I've lost massive money in were things I didn't know anything about. I invested with someone I trusted and it didn't work out and it went to zero. And again, I've done that from time to time. Now, the things that I've invested that I knew better than anyone else that were in my world and my control and it's out of my, totally different. So what's your world? What's the wealth ecosystem in Dan's world today? Or actually, I want to switch gears on that. I want to go there, but I also just want to go, your team is how large, like and you just combined the partner. You just had congrats on the partnership with Kyle, Whistle Beer. You guys are a big organization. So give us a flavor for the size of that organization today.
Well, there's about 150 agents and there's
Massive.
about 150 agents, roughly 30 stateside employees and another roughly 40 overseas employees that run this organization that, we sell houses. It's a simple yet complex business. On day one of the merger, on day one, it's a $900 million producing team with aspirations to grow well beyond that. So we should see $1 billion 2026 around the corner. And we have we have our eyes set on a lot. And beyond that, it's more so what can we do to like Kyle and I were driving the same things, we were having the same day, duplicating efforts every day, building the same things. Like, and so in coming together, we're now able to combine it. We free up our time. We free up our time to find better opportunities, to build relationships, to build ancillary businesses, to just not have to duplicate our efforts, which ultimately is going to serve everybody at a higher level. So we're having fun with it. I definitely carry that philosophy of like, hey, we're going there. We're pointed in the right direction. And it's just a daily adventure now that I get to just enjoy.
So you have these two massive teams. You put them together. Like to your point, you probably had you definitely had marketing people as an example, and he had marketing people.
Correct.
Well, we could probably we don't need probably double the marketing people we come together. Maybe we have a little bit of an overlap, but you probably had some controller or CFO. Well, you don't need two of those now. So there's a lot of synergies. The costs come down because you can combine. When you look at it, at an organization of that set, aside from your network and all the people you talk to, EXP, that's just incredibly massive. How do you take what Dan learned, the things he financially, like all the lessons and models that Dan's learned over this career? How do you now teach that throughout the organization? Like, what does that look like? And what are those principles you share with them? And it could be business, wealth, personal. How do you think about all those people? Because I know you care deeply like I do. Like I'd die for my people. How do you think about that, or how do you communicate that?
Well, what you're touching on is really one of the biggest things that they're looking for from the leader. Like ultimately, there's far better people for sorting out the real estate problem and the operations issues, and for getting them their collateral, and there's just far better people for all of it. So ultimately, aside from bringing in opportunity, because you're still the rainmaker, you're still going to bring in. I used to think of it as let me go bring in the listing. I now think of it as let me go bring in the relationship with Rocket Homes or something like that, right? So there's building all of that, which is still the responsibility. But beyond that, all that you're really wanted for as a leader, as long as a good vision for the business has been set, but on the daily, it is to actually transmute those lessons back to them. So there's really two forums. 3-4 forums. So there's a few things. One is we have our weekly sales meeting. Now everybody does. In our world, Kyle's going to lead one on a monthly basis, and I'm going to lead one on a monthly basis. That we're there and present at all of them. But when I say lead them, like that core lesson that is given at each of these meetings, They're just on different topics than they used to be. They're on wealth building. They're on much more wealth building related conversation and self-development awareness, growth related conversations. So that's an avenue for that. The morning huddle that we lead, each of us as well, on a once a week basis, aside because we have such talented team members and sales leaders and so on that lead these things as well. But we come in and that's space with the team to be able to do that. We meet with our top tier of agents on a bi-weekly breakfast where the conversation is elevated, right, to what's going on with people selling 40 or 50 or 100 homes in a year. What are they doing with their money? What are they doing at home? What issues are being created? How are they dealing with just the changes that naturally happen in your personal life? I mean, sometimes we get together at these things and all I sit there discussing with somebody is their marriage, and so those are those are spaces in which we very purposefully try to get those things done, or create space for. We hold a monthly lunch with everybody whose birthday it is that month. We hold a monthly lunch with everybody who's new to the team. So just ways of making sure to spend smaller group time with as many as we can and just share. I don't know if that answers your question, Brett, to some
No,
degree.
it totally does. And so what you mentioned is it went through that, right? Like you would think the sales meeting would be what's the business opportunity, what's the business challenge, and your work. And don't get me wrong, I know you're doing that, but you mentioned something there where you're like, sometimes it's sitting down and talking about their marriage. People might be listening to that like, Dan, as a leader, should you be involved in one of your employees or one of your agents' marriage? I mean, shouldn't you keep a hard line between personal and professional? And what would you say to that?
I don't know how you could. I don't know how you could tell people, "Hey, I care about you. I love you. We're gonna do all we can to help you grow," and then they bring something forward. Don't get me wrong. I don't sit there and go, "Hey, Brett, tell me about your marriage."
Yeah, no, they came forward. Hey, Dan, I got a problem at all.
But they bring something forward. How on earth would I say, "Hey, sorry"? Like that's where we draw the line. Like this thing that's actually way more important to you than everything else that we've ever discussed. No, I can't share any of that with you. I've never had my struggles. I've never had my triumphs. I've never had my lessons. I've got nothing for you. No, I don't know how you could genuinely deliver on the promise of truly caring about them and not go there. And I'm not telling them what to do with it or not do with it. And I'm not the expert, trust me. But I'm certainly, I think that if you have people that want to open up, their person, they want to open themselves up to you, it is a huge mistake for you to build that kind of wall, or boundary. Hey, don't bring that here. I mean, they're not telling me about their drug deal, right? Like, it's
Right.
like, hey,
Oh,
don't bring that here. They're talking about their marriage. And so I love it. I love talking about something like that because what they're talking about is never the marriage. Like, that conversation's always going to turn to how do they participate in creating problem? Where's their responsibility in it? That's going to always turn back to something related to that, related to them. Um, and those problems out there are that big great mirror, right, of just what's happening within. So I
I
enjoy it. I think you could tell even, some people are just listening to the podcast. Some people, I don't know if you have this on YouTube, Brett, as well, or where you put it, but if you're watching the video, I think you just see, I enjoy it. It's
I would argue. So I was just asking a question that I've heard. I believe exactly as you do. I actually would go so far as would say when people, it's their personal problems that have to get fixed that unlock the deep work, the marriage, the relationships, and then their business thrives. Right? Like, so I believe that as a leader, it's the person, it's the entire human. If they come forward and they need help in their marriage, you need to be a sounding board, give them a way forward, come up with ideas, brainstorm solutions, give advice, and help. Because if you help them fix that, right, that can unlock, their lives. And I think we get lost on, I think that gets lost, that people don't realize that's the thing. Like I coach entrepreneurs, that. And what's funny, I had a lady that hired me and I've been working with her probably 6 or 7 years. And early on, she's like, oh my gosh, you're such a great business strategist. And I just laugh at that comment. I go, you know, all I really helped you do? I helped you hire a nanny at home. That's all I did. Like it was, she had some guilt, right? I'm not, she had this massive career, but I'm not being enough at home as a mom. And, you know, like as I need to cook dinner every night. And that's my value as a mom. And I helped her work through that. Like her value wasn't that she made a great, you know, lasagna. It was actually just a lot more than that. And so working through that, as soon as we got through all that, her business just went like this. So if you're not having that conversation, like that person, you and I, because we've done so much self-work, we're students of the life experience, you and I can offer that person a perspective. And the people watching this, when you're leading your folks, like help them solve their problems. They're in your organization. You owe them the fact that their lives are better financially, personally, and everything because they were with your organization. I think leaders owe that to people.
No doubt about it. Yep. We actually have someone in the organization right now. I'll try to keep it very vague to not, out this person's stuff, but a person in the organization was being discussed. What's going on with aspects of performance, aspects of feedback from others on this person. And I asked, well, what are we going to do? What needs to happen? Where do we need to, I was kind of more in a business minded space in these questions. Like how do we fix them? And someone else in the meeting actually wisely said, it's not any of that. This person needs to go sort out these things, and they named things that I'm not even going to name to try, because maybe that leads to someone close listening and thinking and, revealing who. But a person just needs to work on these things about himself, resolve these things 100% personally relate. And as soon as that stuff is resolved, all these business issues, the friction being created, they're all going to dissolve. They're all going to be gone. And his ceiling will be, he's going to go and, we'll find a new ceiling at some point, but the current one's going to be shattered. And this was the person saying this was very wise, because like this isn't even like a very, it's not like a mystical person saying it. It's like a complete like operations person saying this, that this is what was needed for this person. So there's no doubt about it. It is, I'm sure, isn't there a book like You're the Lid or something? You are always the lid. Mm-hmm. You are the lid on your business, on your organization. If you're leading people, it's you.
Yeah, I think giving that person, to your point, chaos at home, it's chaos at business. You fix the chaos there, it'll solve it. All right, Dan, as we're wrapping up here, I ask every guest these same 3 questions. What are the top 3 books that have most impacted your life?
Well, we've been throwing one out there quite a bit. I'm going to give you Untethered Soul.
I love it. Michael Singer, great book.
It's just unbelievable. I just bought 4 copies recently, which isn't enough, but I just bought 4 recently just to give out. It is. I believe that therapists would likely be out of business if everyone on this planet read that book.
I read it every year. I take it with me every year.
Yeah.
When I go, I literally, I have 5 books that I read every single year. It's on the list. And I usually do it when I go to Christmas and New Year's in Kauai. I bring that book, I sit down, and I read The Untethered Soul. I'm such a fan. The second book, The Surrender Experiment, if you haven't read that.
It's on my shelf.
Well, it's like how he took the untethered soul and applied it to his life. Like how do you take the idea of just releasing and, not trying to take control over things you can't control, how he did it in his life. It's awesome. So good. So you love the, so you got to read this in Surrender Experiments. That's amazing. All right, what's your next one? That's a great book.
I had no idea that you do that with that book, or even that you would know the book. So that's great. I'll give you the third. I'll stay in that vein. The third is a book called Letting Go by Hawkins.
Okay, I've not read that. What's it about?
It's a great book for someone that has read Untethered Soul.
Okay.
And I mean, how crazy you want me to get right now?
This podcast, the listeners know that I'm literally the craziest person they've ever met in their entire life. Like the views I share, I'm being just raw about my life. They're so crazy that no question.
Can I get you want to get weird?
I want you to be radically transparent and as weird as it is in truth. So
It's a book. I'm guessing it's going to be related to the topic of surrender experiment, right? As it's letting go. But essentially, what we don't recognize, and especially in the West, like it's not taught, it's not considered, is we repress or suppress most things, especially most challenging things. There's that term, you sweep it under the rug, we hide it, but these things don't go away. They're actually within you. That annoyance you felt toward this person, the anger you felt toward that, the guilt that you felt toward this other thing. Guilt is gigantic, just cripples people. It's all within you. And so anyway, the point is that one thing where, hey, this person wronged me. Think about this, okay, to make this tangible. XYZ happened with this person. They did me wrong, and now I'm screwed in these ways. Okay, well, that either anger or guilt of why didn't I do it differently? Why didn't I avoid it? Why didn't I see it coming? Why didn't I see that business deal going bad? All of the So what happens is, think about this: that one emotion of despair or grief or loss. Maybe you lost somebody in your life. Maybe you lost a parent, a spouse. That one emotion creates tens of thousands of thoughts. Why didn't I? Shouldn't I have? Couldn't I have? If I did, if I didn't, well, what if I'd gone this way and that way? You can't change any of it, by the way. But that one emotion, this creates all of these thoughts, and we have no way of releasing the thoughts because we have no clue of how to release the emotion. So essentially, by the way, within the second chapter, you already know how to do it. And then it goes into, it's a beautiful book, though. I'd encourage you to read it through. But essentially, if you can learn how to sit with, okay, I feel this guilt about this thing I did, and just instead of repressing it, if you can sit there and just feel it, allow it, let it be, don't judge it, don't label it, just breathe into it, just be with it, you'll actually see that it only ever takes like 2 minutes or sometimes 20 for that feeling. If you actually identify where within your physical frame it lives, because it is lodged somewhere. And yes, it is making you physically ill eventually. But if you find where it is and you can feel where that lives within you, and you just stay with it and you allow it and truly let it be, you'll feel it transmute. You'll feel its energy just pass and be gone. And when that happens, what's very interesting, Brett, is you often don't even remember what you were doing, because the 10,000 thoughts have no home. There's no place for them anymore. There's no use for them. They're literally just, they're gone. Why didn't I? Why couldn't I? Those 10 years you can spend torturing yourself like that, they're gone because their home no longer exists, which is that anchored emotion. So it's probably related to surrender experiment. I'm not sure.
Damn, that was so good. So I'm glad you asked if you could be weird. I don't even think that's remotely weird at all. I think that's so cool. I'm so glad you shared that. It is. I'm going to read it. So I'll come back to you and we'll text, and I'll let you know what but I think that a lot of people have a situation like that. It does live somewhere, that energy. And again, I look at this as the 30-year-old Brett couldn't have had this conversation. If you'd have told me that the energy lives in you and you got to spend some time and sit with, today I realize, I go, oh, I could not agree more, right? Like when you say the untethered soul, I'm such a Michael Singer fan. I've gone like to the chorus. I mean, I'm way deep in that world. You talk about letting things go and releasing. I read this book, and it's not, I think this guy sold 11 copies, and so I was one of them. But in the book, so Dan, it has you go write down the person who wronged you, like the two people, okay? Like something they did that they're wrong, and you've been carrying it. And so I'm like, oh man, I got two instantly, right? Boom, boom. What did they do? Got it. Right? You could feel like he goes, now I want you to pick up your cell phone and text them and take responsibility for all of it. I was like, wait a minute. I'm going to take the people that they did it to me. I mean, like, it's one of those, sure, my DNA's on it, but I went in there and I did the exercise. Like, I know that we had this specific thing happen. I'm going to own 100% of it. It's not you. I could have done things differently. And you just own it all. And then he goes, I want you to come back to this notebook and write down how you feel 2 hours from now. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to feel like I tuck my tail between my legs. I'm just going to, I'm not going to feel great. instantly, Dan, I mean, what happened? Like, I didn't realize they were renting real estate in my mind.
Hmm.
It was back there. It was deep down, tucked away in my mind, and it was all gone. And I had nothing but love for them. And he's like, it's not about that you even believe that you fully own it. It's just that you're releasing it and going. And to this day, I can talk to those folks. I have no ill will. I hope they do great, right? It has no impact. But like going through that exercise was so impactful for me, right? To take the people who've wronged you, who've hurt you, and said the terrible things and go, you know what? However we got here, I did it because I could have fixed it. It didn't. And I'm sorry. And I own my part of it. And I wish you all the best. It was like a transformational moment for me.
Very
Again, weird, airy fairy, you know, I know that gets a little weird, airy fairy, but it changed, it helped my life. It improved the quality of my life.
And you know what's interesting about what you, because we start qualifying like, hey, can I get weird? It's airy fairy. I'm not sure. And we even go there as confident people. We've both done it in this conversation. And it's important that we recognize that there's never been anybody who's ever participated in any of the sort of thing that we're talking about who hasn't had an improvement in their life. So why not?
100%.
It's a lot more brave not to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Dan, we're wrapping up. Imagine you're Dan right now. You're talking to 21-year-old Dan. And you're going to give him advice. What would you say to him?
It would be really, I think it would be really similar to the type of advice that I just repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly share with my kids. And ultimately, like, I'm just trying to put in their mind that the most that the most important thing they can do is just be, like, to be them, to truly be yourself. But what does that mean? It's to recognize that you're loved, that you're good, that you're, that truly, like, you are perfect as you are, and there's no test, there's no thing you have to do to pass, to prove to there's no test. You just by being, you are everything. And I could tell you that because, at least in my particular case, though I don't think it's unique, I spent probably the first, it's funny, like, life, the way it really works is you're born and you're as close to a godlike creature as possible. You're in perfect presence. You remember your kids, Brett, when I just always thought it was so amazing. They could be so upset, like beyond themselves upset, and a second later laughing and giggling. Well, that's because that second's gone and this second's here. Us adults, we need the surrender experiment. We need the tethered soul. We need the power of now. We need to do all these things to try to get back to presence. But when you're a kid, you're just present. You're there. And at some point in your childhood, something happens. And it might be horrible. The neighbor comes over, does an awful thing. It might be way less horrible. Like, just things that happen, like the type of thing where I'm saying I'm pretty sure that I'm hurting my kids somehow that I'm not aware of, like that I know for sure it's happening, because it happens to 100% of humans. And so, and then we spend a lot of our life, like we spend most of our life trying to reconcile that. So in my case, I was misbehaved. I was rambunctious. I spent most of my life being told I was bad. I was misbehaved. I'm not this, I'm not that. And so I don't have a big trauma in my life, but I have the little accumulated trauma of, basically the first 14 years of my life or so until I got to high school and started performing better, of being told I was not good. Not by my parents, by the way. They're the only ones that didn't do it, but by everybody else. And so the reason I would give that advice to my 21-year-old self, or I say this a lot to my kids, there's nothing you have to do, there's nothing to prove, there's no test, you just be, you're safe, you're loved, you're perfect, is that so much of my life trajectory was like trying to prove that I'm good, trying to do, and you can see the good that comes from it, in that, yes, it also led to certain performance and certain things, and so that's all good and well, but gone too far, um you know I could point to all of the things that it creates that just do not serve you, that you don't need, that like achieving those things to prove something to my mom's friend whose name I don't remember is like not that great an achievement, even if it put money in my pocket. Like it's just, it's not the right reason to do anything. And so I would remind myself of that. And I would try to have some kind of wisdom filled conversation about just not judging yourself like so strongly, right? Like everybody is truly their worst enemy, but not because of the way that term's typically used, but just the amount of judgment to self. And it's because think about this, Brett, like, you know, the saying, hey, relax, everything is under control. We're born thinking we can control all things around us. Well, I can control how Brett's going to react if I say hi in this way, and if, oh my God, he didn't react the way I wanted. So like, that's my fault. I should have like, I think that one term, relax, everything is under control, it's so freaking wrong. The only thing that's relaxing is to realize nothing is under control. So I have this t-shirt that says relax, nothing is under control, which is the only thing that is true. And that is, this is the space I would be in with my 21-year-old self. And by the way, I'm the 43-year-old self too. So.
Well, very well said. Yeah, I've needed maybe even my 40-year-old self. Well, Dan, you're a treasure to every person that gets to interact with you. I thanks for all you do for all the industry and everyone. If our listeners want to go, Dan, I want more Dan. Where can they go get more Dan?
Sure, man. Thanks for asking. First of all, there's so much, by the way. Like if you're like, oh man, that's I don't know if I could do those topics all the time. Like, no, we're talking about, I have a world of business, right? And of sharing with people how to grow their business, and tons of it is tactical, tons of it is all that. When I sense, Brett, that I'm in a conversation with somebody that likes to be in the space that we were just in, I just take advantage of it because I love it. But yeah, we've grown just amazing businesses that I'm proud of. And if you want to just hang out, learn, or whatever it might be, just find me on Instagram, I would say, Daniel Beer. Find me there. And of course, we have all kinds of things. We have an amazing community of people, and we can go from there.
And you've got a podcast. What about your podcast? Go check out your podcast for your ideas.
Yeah, Masters of Business podcast, if you want to check that out. And just shoot me a message. Say you saw me here on this channel. I'd love to share that with Brett as well. He loves hearing about that, I'm sure. And I'd love to connect with you. Brett, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Dan. That's a wrap. We'll be back here soon. Go out there, be wealthy, and relax. Nothing's in control. Thanks, Dan. You're great. See you, man. Bye.